I'd like to introduce you to Kamran Haidari, and he leads the technical strategy and build of real payments at TD Bank. And he has a good presentation, which will be the foundation for a conversation we'll have about faster payments, something in which I'm very interested, and Fagility Advisors has been involved with for a while. It touches different parts of the world differently, and I'm looking forward to a conversation about that. So let's go. Hey, Kamran, it's good to see you again.
Good to see you as well, David. How are you doing?
Excellent, excellent. Good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning to everyone on the call. I know we have more than 200 people, 250 audience around the globe. So it could be morning, could be night at some points. But I just want to say good morning to everyone, and I'm hoping everyone's doing okay. We're all dealing with COVID, which is one of the main discussion points for this forum. So I'm glad to have this opportunity. And again, thanking Intelligentness and also David. It's a great privilege to have the Fireside Chat with you. Fire we need in Toronto. I'm living in Toronto, so the weather is getting cold, so that Fireside Chat resonates, although there's no real fire, but the weather is getting colder here.
You could do a virtual, I'm sure I could find a Zoom background for a virtual fire. So anyway, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you've got a slide that talks about the work you've done, and let's go to that.
Let me do that. Okay, let me just share my screen.
And I think it would be fine just to share the screens, and then we can just work off of that for our conversation.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so let me click on that. How can I? Okay.
Share screen at the bottom?
Yeah, I'm just looking at it.
Yeah, no worries. This is, we've all been compelled to adopt technologies that we hadn't known before, for better, for worse, and we'll all walk away with this. Well, there's much talk about what the workplace will be like. Anyway.
And, the fun fact is I'm a technologist from a background perspective. So technology works sometimes.
And sometimes not.
And sometimes not. So from a background perspective, and again, this session, again, a bit of a disclaimer. All of the views are my personal views, and I'm sharing my personal viewpoint with you, David, and the audience. So just wanted to put a bit of a background without spending too much time on it. I have been very lucky to be a technologist, but also working on payment systems for the last 2 decades, which has been quite an amazing journey. Before joining TD, worked with another financial institutions for a long time. And my range of experience for techies on the call goes from database administrations to system administration at the OS level, Unix, AIX, you name it, Java development on the front end. In those days, we had struts and MVC model and framework, and I'm dating myself, all the way back to Y2K for people who left through Y2K. So I've seen the journey and how the platform is evolving and how payments is evolving as a whole. A couple of more highlights. I've been very fortunate in my past life to be part of a platform modernization for cash management, online banking, and dealing with a lot of payment instruments ranging from wires to EFT to ACH. EFT is a Canadian instrument for people who are outside of Canada. But also somewhere around 2008, I believe, we also said, okay, let's just, everyone's talking about ISO 2022, let's just do something about it and create an integrated payment file using Swift, the Swift network on FileAct. And in those days, there were talks around ISO 2022.
So stop for 1 minute, just real briefly into ISO 2022, because many of us who are deep in this know it, but just give us 20 seconds on what that means, how it changes the way payment information has been conveyed in the past versus the way it will be conveyed in the future.
Excellent question. Thanks for stopping me there. So
that's part of what I do.
Yes, no, this is good. So a great life example would be this. And it could apply to the consumer side of things, or it could be applying to the business side of things as well. So we all transact when we all make payments. And if you look at your bank statement, you may see some of the information. Yeah, you can see a debit memo, credit memo happening. But did you pay an invoice? Did you send a gift to someone? Did you do something, renovation around your house? Where's the slip? All of that information is kind of lost in the process. So I see ISO 2022 as it's a scheme, it's a payment format, but carries a lot of data richness with it. So it's a great vehicle for both sides of the transaction, to sender and receiver, to get additional data and insights from a data richness perspective. So it's a format, it's an XML file format. It's a standard driven by Swift organization. But that's the main mandate behind it. Richness of data is the main value prop.
So adding more data to the payment information.
Correct.
Carry on. So anyway, please carry on. I think that was 30 seconds. Carry on.
Love this conversation. So at that point, there was no like firm standard defined. So we used the ISO from Swift organization, and also we kind of built some assumptions with it. But short story, we were able to come with this integrated file that supports ACH, EFT, and wire payments for corporate clients sending their transactions over FileAct through Swift. And also in those days, there were also a lot of payment hubs being stood across the industry. So had an opportunity to work on one of the payment services hub, and that's the background. So I'll take a pause there. If no other questions, I'll just go into present in terms of what's happening right now in terms of the work that I do within TD.
And feel free, anybody on there, to just text with a question. I know being someone who's run meeting events on my own, I know it's hard enough to get people to ask questions in an in-person event. So if you've got them, just put them into the chat. But otherwise, there's lots to talk about here because this is a very hot topic right now. Kamran, I think you can continue.
Okay, so just quickly in terms of what faster payments mean to me in my world, just want to kind of build that appreciation with the audience. So two things from my perspective, faster payments in terms of the platforms that I support from a technology standpoint. E-transfer, indirect e-transfer. So again, it's a P2P transaction, a way to send money between two entities, mostly consumers, within Canada. I call it also the slowest real-time payment within Canada. So if you have auto deposit set up on the other side, when I send you money using your email or mobile number, David, you'll get the deposit almost in a few seconds or within minutes on the other side in your account.
So is that real money into the account, or
real
is
money.
that that's real money into the account? Okay, but
Correct.
you said it's
real money from client's perspective. So I'll get into the RTR and settlement and all those pieces in terms of future of industry. But from a client experience perspective, when I send you money and you have auto deposit, you will see it in your account within seconds and minutes.
Got it. And how long has that been in place?
So it's been there for quite a while. In 2017, I worked within TD on implementing enhanced user features for Interact. So by end of October 2017, we put those features in production, and that added two capabilities, mainly auto deposit I just touched on. And the second capability is request money. So again, for the audience, a good real life example would be request money. My kids, I have a couple of teenagers living in their rooms. They could send me a request money without talking to me over the mobile app. And if I want to see them, I can decline the request money. And then if I let them be in their room, then I just accept it. So those are the features, but it's been there for quite some time in place. Make sense?
It does. It does indeed.
Okay. Good. So that's e-transfer. And then the second product I want to touch on is called global money transfer. So e-transfer, think of e-transfer within Canadian space, FI to FI or within entities. But global money transfer, we have this platform in place now. So it really resonates based on what I was hearing from Dr. Abhishek as well. So as a user or as a consumer, you have the opportunity to look at how you send your transaction, but also have choices. So if I want to send money to somewhere in the world and the recipient prefers cash, then I can use Western Union. if you have a Visa card and you are in another country in Europe or Asia, anywhere, then I can send money from my account to your card. And also I can send money from my account to your account. So this platform, using this platform, our customers can send global transfers to over 200 countries. And this is very timely because, go ahead.
So this sounds like a hub then that connects into different systems depending on where you're going.
So yeah, I'm a little careful to use the concept of the hub. I'll call it Rails, so like payment rails in the back. You're right. But from a client perspective, think of it as a marketplace. So I want to send money. The experience is awesome. So it's one of its kind in Canada, I believe. I'm very proud of it. So as a client, you get 3 options.
I can tell.
You get 3 options, and then you can get 3 FX rates, and you can compare the rates as well between each rail. And then whatever makes sense to you, how fast you want the money to go to the other place, to the recipient, and which FX rail makes sense, which FX rate is more preferable, and also which rail you want to use. So concept is marketplace, but in the background, you're right. We use different rails, and myself and my team are mainly focusing on building those rails. I call them highways for payments. So up top, we're connected to the ecosystem, and downstream, we're connected to partners and global entities to move the money across.
So I guess a couple questions around that. Mm-hmm. From the user's point of view, and this mainly directed towards business or consumer, or could it be both right now?
Right now, it's mainly consumer. If I'm
mainly
not mistaken.
Consumer. Yeah. So does the consumer, if the consumer has to choose between these 3 different rails, do they know the difference between them? Would they be able to intelligently decide, the average consumer saying, do I want to do it through international bank transfer, Visa Direct, or Western Union? Or would that be done simply by presenting them a screen that says, here's the pricing difference? Or how would that work?
I think it's a mix of all. So there's some support material because it's fairly a new product for consumers. So you have the support material, but from an experience perspective, once I click on send money, then I'll be presented with that rates, notional rates that I could proceed and then choose, and then I can go in one of the streams. So I'll get the 3 rates from all the 3 rails, and then based on my preference, then I can choose to follow with Visa and complete the rest of the transaction, or Western Union or account.
Now,
okay.
Are you conversant with some of the things going on in different parts of the world where they have real-time payment systems?
So RTGS and NPP, I know about them. I know they're probably a bit ahead of what we're doing from a RTR perspective in Canada. So from a work perspective, I think we're just at the right time to kind of have some learnings from those areas and kind of build the RTR to the next level. So right now, if I go back to e-transfer,
yes, please.
We're working. Sorry, that's the last slide. Let me just see if I can go back. Yeah, here. So there's this industry initiative happening right now in Canada, led by Intrac, and it's called Intrac Instant. So what it provides is a few options. One is around account number routing. So it goes beyond consumer, getting into businesses as well. So instead of using your email or mobile number, if you have a business, David, I could put your account number, and then instantly the money will make it to your account. So that's the Intrac Instant. Again, money makes it to your account instantly, but when it comes to the settlement and liquidity management between FIs and entities, that's the next wave or the next step from a Payments Canada RTR modernization for folks who are outside of Canada. I just wanted to highlight that.
Yeah, so currently, presumably there's a batch process that says, and then somebody has to make risk assessments to say, here's the amount that I could credit or debit instantly, because I don't know exactly what the liquidity is until later in the day. Is that a correct assessment?
So, something, yes. So that it's a batch-driven end of day sort of reconciliation and settlement that happens. And then from a credit and risk management perspective, I think those levers are in place, but they're changing, right? So as part of Intrac Instant, first step is to increase the limit to $25,000 for business transactions. And to your point, as we see that option and the industry sees that option, that may change, and then that may get increased, similar to what happened in Europe and some other parts of the world.
So talk to me a little bit about that, about what's happened in Europe, because I know Europe has had different means of enabling world-wide payments, real-time payments prior to those that we had in the U.S.
Yeah. One example I think that I heard from Europe, again from an adoption standpoint, when I talked to some of the partners and all that, was around the limit. So last year, I think at some point I heard that the limit for real-time transactions went up to 250,000, if I'm not mistaken. So the fact that the instant payments are irrevocable, and there's a zone of synchronicity. I'm getting into the technology side of it as well. Within 5 seconds, the money has to make it, or it's a accept or reject. So the money make it to the other side or not. So 5 seconds within that zone of synchronicity between Interact and FI, so sending and receiving FI. So that could drive adoption in lieu of some other instruments. So if I'm buying a car or making a down payment, instead of doing a check draft or certified check draft, this may be a good vehicle for me as a user to leverage. Does that help?
It does help. And one of my questions too becomes interoperability, because right now we have many different rails that are being used. And do you foresee going forward that will be the case? We'll have different rails. So one could have a standard that was set, like by when the EU sets, a standard for, any of the things they come out with, or you could have multiple private entities that come up with their own ways of doing it, and then a third party would say, we will knit those together and allow it to happen seamlessly. So from the customer's perspective, they're not aware that there's different things going on in the background. What would you think is the most plausible way forward?
So great question. I don't think there's a silver bullet to that, David. It's acknowledged as an issue potentially across the industry.
The whole point of silver bullets is if you ever hear anyone use the word silver bullet, it's always there's no silver bullet. Because have you ever heard anyone say in a presentation, "Here's the silver bullet"? No, it's always there's no silver bullet. But anyway, go ahead.
So there's a great acknowledgement though across the industry for the need to have interoperability. So when it comes, especially between different schemes, if you need to switch from one payment scheme to another payment scheme, or even make it simpler, how do we open it? Like Dr. Abhishek mentioned, open banking and all that. How do you open up to the broader ecosystem, and how do you ensure all the players in the ecosystem can connect and send messages back and forth in a consistent manner? So we're looking at that between Interact and Payments Canada in terms of ISO format, for instance, to make sure it's consistent and kind of aligned. So great issue, I think, but the short answer is we will solve it one step at a time as we go through the design and build and specifications discussions across the entities.
We've actually got some good questions here. We've got, so I should go to those. One question is, what payment rail does this P2P payment model travel upon, a debit or an ACH rail?
A debit or an ACH rail? I would say none.
None.
So yeah, so ACH is more the clearinghouse. From my perspective, it's US bound transactions. So I did, when I was a developer, I did the coding for ACH IAT94 byte. So that's I see it more of a US bound transaction in and out of Canada. Debit is also another rail supported by Interact for debit transactions, but this is more of its own. So from a technology perspective, we are hooked to the APIs of Interact to fulfill e-transfer payments, incoming or outgoing. So it's kind of having its own integration with Interact. Great question.
So there's another question from somebody that in many country banks already offer multi-platform transfers to their customers. So how is what you're describing differ or similar to what's been going on in those other countries?
Yeah, so my comment was more in the context of Canadian space, and providing a choice to customers. So the marketplace, I know it could be available in other places in the globe as well, but within the context of Canadian space, again, I'm really excited that we have this concept of marketplace and choices all at once. So as a consumer for some other platforms, you could go and say, okay, I want to make a Visa transaction, and you just work off of that. Or you could say, okay, I want to make a Western Union transaction, and you have different ways to kind of make that happen, but to have the ability to, at the same time, see all of the FX rates and make a choice or select, I think that's something that I wanted to highlight, and very much excited again.
And then a final one, and then we'll take another brief pause between this and the next presentation. This has been excellent. The question becomes chargebacks, disputes. How are those handled, since that's something that many consumers are accustomed to in the credit card world, or even the debit card world? How are those handled in this situation?
That's a fantastic question, but I'm not sure if I'm going to do justice to it. So what I can highlight, again, from a tech build perspective, technologist view, we have a great capability around managing the limits, for instance, bringing it up and down and controlling the limits and exposure for the bank, for instance, and our clients. But there's another sort of a forum and body around chargebacks on this side of it. That's why when I was touching on the limit increase 25,000, it's the initial step on how it fares against industry and how the adoption happens. Alongside of chargebacks and risk exposure, I think things will be adjusted. That's more of I can get more details from my business partners, but from a tech perspective, limit management is a key from my perspective.
I'm guessing you'll be available if anybody who's been on this call would like to get in touch with you.
Absolutely. So very much passionate. This is topics closer to my heart. Book me for a coffee or chat, and I think my information should be available as well, contact information. They can connect with me. I'll be more than happy to dig in and kind of get into these topics. One more point I wanted to quickly make around what Dr. Abhishek said. So it's a good affirmation that what I heard from him is kind of affirming that my thought process is also in the right place. So he mentioned frictionless, modern, secure, and efficient. I think frictionless is now being talked as invisible payments. And even 5 years back, one of my partners and colleagues, he mentioned he took a cab. I just want to share the story. Cab, got out of the cab, got home, and then a few minutes later, the cab driver started knocking on the back of the door. So he opens the door and says, I need to get paid for my money. So he used to take Uber all the time, and he just got out. So he didn't even think to pay the cab driver.
It shows how it's culturally changed us.
It's changed us, absolutely. So, and again, efficiency is also resiliency, availability, and I'm glad there's talk around platform resiliency and all those things as well at the industry level these days. So very much resonated with me as well.
I want to thank you very much for making the time this morning. This has been fascinating. This is an area that's moving at a very fast pace all around the world, and I appreciate you sharing sharing this with you, sharing with us.
My privilege. My pleasure.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Good. So.